In 2015, Jonathan Watkins brought passion and enthusiasm into the studios of Northern Ballet, where he had been commissioned to choreograph and direct his lifelong dream title, 1984. The title seemed to speak to Northern Ballet's commitment to tell stories that matter and challenge their audience, as well as develop their artists as actors and dancers. The ballet was received well and won the South Bank Sky Arts Award for Best New Dance Production, and was a brilliantly timed moment for the choreographer and two leading dancers, Tobias Batley and Martha Liebolt. Their experience, paired with Watkins' direction, saw them create complex, layered characters in Winston and Julia and a beautifully crafted pas de deux. Pas de deux are often used in ballets in the big moments of characters' lives, and 1984 is no different. The main pas de deux closes the first act, but what can never be predicted is whether that pas de deux will ever be able to be performed outside of the full length, such as the classics like Don Q and Le Corsaire. So it was an unintended but brilliant coincidence that 1984 also gave birth to a new modern classic pas de deux that works wonderfully as part of an evening work. Dancing a pas de deux plucked from a full length offers a huge challenge to the dancers, as they must conjure up a fully formed and fighting character that has as much weight as if you were performing the whole evening's work.
I just couldn't believe how how organic it is, and I thought to myself, how is this able to be taught? Because it's like the steps are so intertwined. It's really fast.
Oh my gosh, you want to throw up afterwards? It's really bad.
Yeah,
it's really tough.
It's really, for some reason, I think because it doesn't stop moving except for that one in the middle on the ground. Yeah. That's the only break that you have. In the first 2 minutes is just constant aerobic exercise.
Yeah.
The pas de deux to close Act 1, in traditional ballets, and also it wanted to feel like the climax of the act. But actually what the story allowed us to do is, this was a moment that Julia and Winston felt that they were unwatched. And when I came to the studio, obviously I had this structure that was musical, that was based on the emotional beats of the book.
Okay.
And so there's clues in the book that give those actions a narrative action script, I call it. It's not a classic romanticism pas de deux that we've seen in ballet before, but in this production, this is the moment to kind of rely on more of a traditional sense of a pas de deux between a man and a woman in a narrative story. And then the narrative within the scene is enough to kind of give you something and give you a journey of just seeing that out of context. I think, like you're saying, as a performer who's playing Julia and Winston, but also as an audience, you can follow, the narrative of the space that they share, the relationship developing throughout the scene.
I don't know if he used these words, but he didn't care if it was ugly or not. He wanted the movement, he wanted the passion, he wanted the whatever was in his head, that's what he wanted, and he didn't care how it got there. If my legs were a little bit like that was okay.
Because it's out of context of the ballet, and it's anyway, right? It's on its own. It's not like any other part of the ballet. It's got a full story arc of its own. They're meeting, they don't really know each other when they meet, and then they get to know each other, and then by the end they really know each other and they know that they're on the same path.
And I am really proud that it can exist, as a thing out of context, and it can deliver some understanding of the book, even though it's a slither of it. So it's always had to be, in my mind, led by Julia, because she's the more, she's the more dominant force, but the kind of more dominant rebel. So she has to lead it to begin with, almost he's tentative. She has to almost teach him where his hands go.
to answer the question, was she in on it or not?
I don't think she was. I like to think that she wasn't.
I like to think that she wasn't, but I think she was. That's how I interpreted it, and that's how I don't know if that's what I.
But the thing about 1984 is, like, in the book as well, like, that's the whole point, is that nobody really knows.
Are they being watched or aren't they? Question mark. Maybe Julia and Winston like look around to check to see, if there's any kind of cameras or surveillance or anything, but as well check in with the audience, because that is taking the fourth wall down and saying you are watching us. Two things that are going on. Are we then complicit by like witnessing them? I knew I wanted that moment, and I knew I wanted, after the kind of thrashing about and the kind of drive of that, I wanted it to settle into a more like eerie sort of like last beat of what have we just witnessed? Have we been seen? Like a cliffhanger in terms of like, is this going to incriminate them?
It's terrifying because nobody actually, I don't know that anybody dies in it. Like, like most ballets, people die at the end or something terrible, Yeah. They're really just like, they've had all of everything taken away from them, like even their understanding of the world. Like, they're just like completely, all of their freedom, all of how they thought the world was has been taken away. And they're just completely, they've lived this whole life that didn't really exist and was completely fake.
Minju Kang trained at the Hamburg Ballet School and danced in their junior company for 2 years before joining Northern Ballet in 2016. Lorenzo Trosello trained at La Scala in Italy and then the Royal Ballet Upper School before joining Northern Ballet in 2016.
So this is what we just call at the very beginning of a rehearsal, kind of a walkthrough. And Dan is just helping the dancers remember that checklist of things that they're going to need to retain all of the choreography. And importantly, especially for this ballet, 1984, to really remember what the narrative arc is and what the pinpoint moments of this pas de deux are. It's the culmination of the first act. And it has a brilliant intensity in it. So he's just walking them through it, going through that checklist, so that as they're doing the steps, they're kind of recreating it and remembering all of the reasons as to why they're doing certain things.
Just easy, ta-da-ta-ya. Try to get, on that one here, guys, try to get a little bit of eye contact as well with that. That's it, Sam. Push. Yeah. Okay, just one second, guys. Just with this push, try to get that position here. And Lorenzo, if you can think of really sliding as she pushes, that would be really nice. Yeah, and yum. That's good. There. It's all caressing. Try to get yourself a little bit more this way. Yeah, and it's really kind of really tender caressing his hands. I think, Lorenzo, you can help there. You can just come out this way a little bit and then we can see her from the front, yeah? And long. I think perhaps, Lorenzo, not so far that way. So it's just right here so that you can be close to her here and just let her out. Let her out a little bit. So you catch on balance and then you push as you extend.
Dan was actually the lead ballet master on this ballet when it was originally created by the choreographer Jonathan Watkins. So if you can't kind of get the choreographer back in the studio to work with the dancers, the next best thing is the person that was there helping the choreographer piece it all together and rehearse the dancers. So Dan was there at the very beginning days of the rehearsals of this piece, and now he's passed it on to at least I think 4 or 5 different partners from various companies actually, so he really is kind of the oracle of this work.
I think, Lorenzo, think from here that it goes up, not that it goes down, but it goes duck, duck. Yeah. Yeah. Better. From through the foot, and out. Yampa. Chiada. Yes, okay, thank you. And Lorenzo, remember that as she goes down here, you go through, like under the leg and over, caressing her leg, and then she takes you almost kind of by surprise, yeah. And you can kind of lift that leg, and yeah, there you go. Maybe let's go up until that point, no? Yeah. Just remembering to really separate, yes, maybe, so it's jada, bada. So each thing is kata, kata, yeah. Okay, let's go with
one of the main focuses is this pas de deux, is that the role that Minju's playing, Julia, really leads Winston. So there'll be a lot of times that you see her literally take Winston's hand and place it on her body, and that was to show the kind of dominance of her, and that she is she's the one leading this meeting in the forest, in the countryside.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, good, guys. Good. Well remembered. It's there in the body still, right? Yeah. Okay, good.
So you will have seen just there that the music starts to really kind of sound quite enticing, and then as Minju, or the character Julia, steps on stage, it kind of expands and there's this breath, and then she just places herself and stays very still. And even though she's not doing anything, there's a real sense of command. So when she kind of walks toward Winston, there's something quite exciting about it, and you're not quite sure, will they, won't they? And then she takes his hand.
So do that first twist and deep second. So go twist and down. And now catch attitude above and tombe. That's a bit better, yes. And you coil, almost, that was better, but here, almost don't stop. And goes there, to the other corner. It's as though you hear something over there, okay? And try not to get this too much of a chasse. So that it just glides, yeah.
A lot of the time as dancers, what we're trying to do is to be as economic and as efficient with our power as we can be. And then a lot of the time it's about then controlling that so that you can make choices with it. So when you naturally go into a jump or a turn, you're having to use a kind of real impetus of power, but it's then being able to shut that energy down and contain it so that you can land and then also efficiently and smoothly move into the next step, whatever that may be. And Dan's really great at this. He was a fantastic dancer himself. an incredible partner. So he really knows when to push the body and go for something full throttle, when sometimes actually you have to pull back a little bit, and it's all to do with that kind of push and pull of movement, and where you can really nail something and hit it with a lot of power and energy, versus times when you need to be a little bit more subtle about the way that you execute something.
Okay. Very important, the very last one, that you're just looking up and then you see her, so that the whole thing has like a and up, and then you see her and take maybe a tiny little bit of a plie to go to her. Yeah, guys, the meeting together was very good. Now if you Minju, try to be where you need to be to go ta, and you push into fifth in one go. So cha.
That's a really great correction, because actually a lot of the time corrections will be based on either the narrative, so what you're trying to tell physically, versus the practical, how you can do that physically. So like Dan said, the contraction there that Minju does as she comes into Winston, it's wonderful, it looks great, it's very suggestive, but that contraction only works if you establish those shoulders down and that proud chest up first, and then you contract in, then that's saying something. Otherwise, if you start off in this position, it doesn't quite give the audience the right message.
From up and over there, once more. Cha, cha, chi, cha, chi. Now stay with her, come forward. That's it. Now you can push, push, push. Cha. Yeah, that leg can also, it can kind of like, yeah, don't bring it down to the floor too early. Extend it, going beyond. Da, boom, boom. There you go. Yes. Yeah, Minju, this can be a little deeper.
And again there, the way that Minju develops that leg out to the front, that looks really luxurious, and it looks even more luxurious when it's countered by that still position into the sixth after. So it's that kind of play with the movement in terms of indulging in something and then shutting down that energy and being very still. And again, that suggests conversation and a kind of battle of wills, as it were, between the two characters. What is great about this couple, as Julia and Winston, is they've actually learnt this pas de deux completely out of context. So they haven't done 1984 as a whole ballet. In fact, I don't even think these dancers were here when we created it, but they've managed to learn the pas de deux, and with the coaching from Dan, they're fully invested in the characters. So, you know, they've learnt this for some performing opportunities that are coming up, but they've also learnt it because it helps them to continue to develop as artists. They're learning a modern piece of work that was created by other dancers, and they're able to kind of put their stamp on it. And that doesn't mean in any way that they're changing it, but they're owning the steps and they're owning the characters in their version of what this is.
Yeah, just a little longer, please. Yeah. Down, up, up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take your time, take your time. Well done, well done, well done. We haven't done that lift in ages. Okay, we'll get back and we'll have a look at it.
It's actually a really hard lift, and if you think about that in terms of kind of geography, Lorenzo's just been sat on the floor in a relaxed position, his arms behind his shoulders. He then has to stand up, collect Minju around the hips, and then proceed to lift her above his head. So that's a really big journey for him, and also he needs to get his hands in exactly the right point on her body to make sure that her full body weight is kind of balanced and counted across the top of his head. If he was to get his hands in the wrong position, the weight could feel like it's going to go behind him, or almost worse, in front of him, where the female dancer then has to really pick up her legs and hips to alter that. So it's a really huge transition, and of course the idea is to make it look absolutely seamless and smooth.
Yeah, the left foot can be more like on his area, do you know, like on his, where he is, so don't feel that you need to be this side. Now, maybe put your foot kind of like past him a little bit, so that maybe where his knee is good. Yes, that's it. And then you really try to stretch your back, so it's kind of almost like a desire to him. Push and push. Yeah. Let's try this. So try to develop it as he pulls you up, and as you develop it, try to reach that way, which will put your weight over the top of him. And Lorenzo, you kind of try to get it in one, but slow enough that it grows as it's going up. Yeah. Oh. Yes, it's
That was actually brilliantly done, and like Dan said, it's all about the timing. So Minju needs to wait until Lorenzo's got her to a certain point, and then she can initiate her legs and développé them out to the side. And that all needs to happen seamlessly and obviously telepathically with each other. So again, it's about rehearsing, and also getting used to the adjustment on the hips. And when you know that it feels right, to then initiate the legs and really kind of indulge in that gorgeous flying position.
And da 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and okay, yeah, very good. That's back now. Yeah, that's better. But remember that the 9 we need to quickly go so that we can catch this on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put down 9 every time you put down on 9 of those two lifts. Yeah. Shall we just go through that little bit before we put it to music? So you bring her over. There and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6. Ideally, very good, guys. Spot on where everything happens, but we need ideally 5, 6. Lift. And caress. The spacing is actually very good. It's just that there's light a little bit more upstage, but the space is good, guys. Yeah. Minju, just as he puts you down here, just really make sure that this is all to him, yeah? So champa, attitude, flick, and attitude. This is all, yes. A little bit late with us 6 so that we can get ta da dee ta da, a little accent, and you respond. Now ti ta 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 ti ta 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 pa 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 boom. So I think, Lorenzo, it's you anticipating a little bit with your hands a little bit further down, and remember that lovely picture face to face, and we want to favor favor the arabesque, so both feet go, yeah? Can we go from the walk so that we coordinate the walks? There we go. So we go and wa da dee da da dee da 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 and ta ba da bum be dum ba dum ba da 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 1 da da pull and pull. That's good. Okay, say to yourself, say to yourself, by the way you do it. It's more connected, no? It's more connected. And I think, Lorenzo, when you come back to her, this here, you can really connect.
So what's wonderful about that is Dan is really asking the dancers to respond to the music. And the music here is really impressive, actually. It kind of shows just how well Jonathan worked with Alex when they were putting this all together, because narratively it just gives and lifts the choreography so brilliantly. It's telling you everything that you need to know, actually. But in order for that to work, the dancers have to be incredibly accurate with the counts. So even if it physically feels quick to be doing a certain step, if it has been choreographed on a certain note, then that absolutely has to happen then. That's also really beautiful. If you'll acknowledge there, that's the first time that we then see Winston initiate the movement for Julia. He's saying, come on, let's go. Also really building, and it's just saying luxury, enjoyment and pleasure.
Wow, you went further than I expected. Very good, guys, very good.
Pas de deux works completely out of context of the ballet, and that often doesn't happen, but you can really pluck the pas de deux out and you get like a kind of mini story in itself. I know Antti and Ashley, you've both done the ballet before.
Yep.
Whereas Minju and Lorenzo, this is your first experience of 1984. What's that like, coming into a rehearsal, learning the kind of the principal roles in something, but not actually doing the full choreography leading up to that moment? What's the process of that? How do you put it together?
I mean, obviously we asked a lot of questions to the other cast that have done it, that are still here, or that have done at least the ballet. And we knew the story of the ballet, we knew the story of the book and the movie that we sort of watched, didn't we? And so we had an idea, but as you said, the pas de deux is quite long as well. So you have time in it to find the character and to really express the character. It's not like you don't just have like 2 minutes that you just have to like, and it doesn't like come across. You have time to like really build it from the first moment.
Yeah. Okay. So you feel you've got a physical,
There's
decent
like a
length of time to be on stage in that character to build it. And I suppose narratively it's set up really well, because the pas de deux starts with you alone doing a solo with the anticipation of Julia's arrival.
Yeah.
What's it like for you guys? Because Antti, I know you've done it within the full version of the ballet. Is it nice to do it separated from it? Is it a different experience?
Both of those things.
Okay, great.
I mean, it's just a beautiful pas de deux in itself. It's so dramatic, and like you said, it's quite long. So in itself, the pas de deux does have a journey. But yeah, it's very different doing it out of context. I would say, obviously, when you do it in the full production, your character goes through that journey from the very beginning, and then you get to that point, and you're already in the thread of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pas de deux is just so beautiful, and it was just a joy to work on it and bring it back to life.
It was one of those moments where everybody stayed in the wings to watch it. The music is to die for. It just gives such urgency to the whole storyline. how does that facilitate you as performers? Does the music resonate with you? Does it add to it?
Yeah, I think for me, I think I had conversation about the music before, that it takes half percentage of the process for me. That
yeah, okay.
The music really tells the story, or it really does half of the job. When I'm really tired, but then you hear it's coming, so the last push.
Okay, so it's kind of egging you on in a way, isn't it?
And I would say with the music, like, I think we've said this before, but the music also tells the story. So it's not just the dances, the choreography, the music tells the story. And there's like moments in the music that correspond with maybe a gesture or a look or a certain move. So that all builds to creating this amazing just thing that you're watching, you know, because everything works together so well.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes of the people that put all of this together. Jonathan must have worked so closely with Alex, because he knew from the very beginning exactly what he wanted, and there is a really brilliant arc just within that kind of, I think it's only about 6 or 7 minutes, isn't it? But and there's some fabulous moments for me, especially when the solo that Julia goes into, that music is almost kind of a little bit creepy, and but it's also suggestive, and it's just so, I don't know, do you find that there's a lot that you can do with it as the characters? Is there areas you can play with it?
Yeah, definitely. I think also because usually we do these things a lot of times, you know, we have many performances. Each time you come to do it, you might hear something different, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try that this time because that might work. So, and that also comes from the music. You might hear something different in the music or change the dynamics of something. So there's definitely a lot of room to play around with that, especially with this particular piece.
Yeah, okay. Ashley, what about you? Is there space for you? Because I know you and Lorenza obviously have got the practical job of lifting the girls. There's not too much you can play with there because you need consistency, maybe?
Yeah, so I feel for me it's more the first half you can play with, because you're under this illusion that you've constantly been watched your entire life, and all of a sudden you're out in this open space, and you've still kind of got this like sixth sense about you, am I being watched? Which I guess is what the solo at the beginning is. You're looking around for her, but you're also looking, am I being watched?
Okay.
So that whole first half is that sort of letting the guard down. And then, like you say, the second half, it's about the business end of things, it is just go, go, go. But I think the movement is kind of doing your job for you in the second half as the man, because you've let your guard completely down, and you're just going, and your movement is free, and it's all about the relationship between the two of you.
Yeah, definitely. Are you able to find a sense of freedom in it? Because for me, watching it, I've never danced it, but watching it, it's very poignant when you break away and you both have that moment sat on the floor. Then there's a distinct change in the character where Winston seems to lead. That's the first time he leads Julia. Then it seems to really get going in the freedom and the pleasure of the moment that you guys are having in the countryside. Is that an illusion? Because technically it's hard.
I don't think it's an illusion. You definitely feel it. You feel it in the music as well. It's almost like you've got to that point where you just like, you're almost holding your breath, and then at the moment you're just like, you let your breath go, and you just let yourself completely go with it. There's obviously moments where you have to really make sure you're in the right place, or for your partner, but I would say more in performance, you just have to go for it. You know, if you don't, then you're not committing. You're not in the right headspace, because you really need to stay with your character in that journey, rather than thinking about, oh, I've got to do this step well or that. I think in the rehearsal room sometimes that happens, because that's where you're learning and you're refining, but on stage it's very much about portraying exactly what is happening at that moment, which is just complete abandonment.
Okay, so I guess that goes back to that stage of making sure that you feel rehearsed enough, prepared enough, so that you can then go on stage and just allow the subconscious to take over and hopefully kind of almost indulge in the moment.
Completely.
Maybe. What does the ending feel like? And I know that seems like a big step, but I love it. And there's something, when you see the ending, you think, of course that's so obvious, that's the ending, that's how it should happen. But feels quite bold, and also I like how it suggests a kind of cliffhanger. It's the end of Act 1, and then it kind of sets you up for, oh, of course, we've got a whole other act to go. And most people are very familiar with the story, so we know where it's going. Do you feel a sense of perhaps power when you look over your shoulders and direct your focus to the audience?
Definitely, yeah. I think, especially, I remember the very first time we did it, it was here in this studio actually, and there was like the whole company watching and stuff, and I mean, I didn't mean to, but like the way that like the emotion that the padawan creates until the very last moment and stuff, once you look back, you feel like you're kind of like against them. I felt I was like like almost like that you see, like almost
a kind
like,
of confrontation,
like, almost like a fight with them, and like kind of like looking back at them. Obviously that's not what
but that's
but that if you really like put yourself into it, then it almost feels like that. Also when you're like looking at the audience, it's almost like they are like those cameras that in the ballet, like,
they're surveying you.
So it does, I mean, to me it does feel like that.
We felt like, because we haven't done the whole ballet, like we're doing the little kids padawan in the middle of the night, that you know that as you go off, that's the end of the
thing.
But I think that's quite interesting, because you haven't done anything that's led up to that padawan. So potentially the padawan is private between you both until that very last moment when you turn and you acknowledge that you are being watched. And again, you just get that kind of really like creepy vibe from it. But I think it's quite a nice moment as dancers, as actors, as artists, to have that almost standoff.
Definitely, it's, I think, for me, I think it's the only moment of the ballet where Winston feels completely in control of his life and that he has power. Because it's the only time they're alone, but there's still that doubt in his head, but he's just like, you know what, I don't care. I'm in control right now.
He's taken ownership over that decision, hasn't she? Brilliant. Ashley, can I just ask, what's your background? How did you get it?
So I started, I know, right? It's a long time ago. I started dancing at the age of 7. I think it's the case with most male dancers. You're dragged along to your sister's ballet class because there's no one to look after you at home, dad's at work. So I just went along and I got bored, so I said I'd like to join in. All went from there. And then obviously you apply for JAs, essays, York Scholars. I did all of that. And then at the age of 16, went to Central School of Ballet, did my 3 years there, and then was lucky enough to be offered a contract here straight out of Central, and I've been here ever since.
Brilliant. Were you focused on Northern Ballet as a potential company, or did you have, were you open to all sorts of options?
I was open to a lot of things, but I think it was when I went down to London at Central, and we were invited along to sort of dress rehearsals of Northern Ballet when they were at Sadler's. And the big turning point for me was when I saw Wuthering Heights being teched at Sadler's Wells, and that was when all my focus went on to, I'd love to join Northern Ballet.
Okay, so then did you see the original cast?
I did,
Heights?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So then what was it like when you got to step into those shoes and dance Heathcliff?
Like, pretty much like Dan's dream come true, really, isn't it? Like, you're just like, it's a role that made you want to join the company. And then you get to dance it. It's kind of, it kind of completes the journey for you, really. So.
Oh, amazing. And Auntie, what about you? How did you pick Northern Ballet?
I think I had a similar experience to Ash, actually, because it was always on my radar. I remember very vividly coming to see, I think it was 2 performances over a period of a few years. I saw Midsummer Night's Dream and Wuthering Heights as well, and they're just unforgettable shows, and they've always been favourites of mine. So Northern Ballet was always somewhere that I thought, well, maybe it could be. You never know. So that was definitely something that I had my sights set on.
And then again, you've gone on to do the principal parts in both of those ballets.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
do you acknowledge it at the time, or do you think it might be something you look back on when we're, sat there as an old lady doing your knitting?
I think it's definitely the latter. Definitely sat there doing the knitting thinking, did that actually happen?
Did that happen?
At the moment, you're still too close to it, I think.
Yeah.
And you're still too focused on things that are coming up. But I think at some point we'll look back and think, wow, you know, coming from there to there, and it's a crazy journey, you know?
Yeah, no, it is, definitely. And what about you guys? What was your journey to Northern Ballet, Lorenzo?
So I started in Italy, in La Scala for like 4 years.
Okay.
And then I did a summer school in Royal Ballet. So then I joined Royal Ballet for 3 years. And then David came to watch class, actually, at Royal. And then he called a few of us to come here. And the funny thing is that at Royal they told us that they were looking for like male dancers, because at the time you guys were doing Romeo and Juliet of from Monte Carlo. So I came here thinking I'm gonna audition for Romeo and Juliet, like just for that production. And then I took class, and then he called me in the office and stuff, and then he was like, I'm gonna offer you a contract and stuff for like a proper contract. Okay. I didn't see it coming, but yeah. And then I just...
Yeah. Were you familiar with Northern Ballet's work? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Because from Royal, the goal, I feel like once you like come to like Royal and stuff, is to stay like in England.
Okay.
I mean, well, it was for me at least.
Yes.
So then it obviously was in my radar of like companies.
Yeah, the companies within the UK. Yeah, brilliant. It's great. Minju, what about you?
So I was in Korea, and I left when I was 17 to Germany, and then joined Hamburg Ballet School for 2 years, and then joined junior company for 2 years. So previously I was working with junior company with 8 dancers. It's kind of like really family atmosphere. And then I was like, okay, I wanna go to a bigger company with bigger families, you know. And then I tried here, and I still remember that audition. It was Swan Lake.
Oh wow!
Jumping one of the swans, and I just could read the room that everyone is so committed, and I was like, okay, I wanna, you know, at least when I'm going in, I don't wanna stop because of me. So I like started to run, learn every steps. And then I remember I joined one of the run-through rehearsal.
Oh wow!
And I did it. I was like, okay,
yeah.
At least they didn't stop because of me. Yeah, and then I got a job, and then it's been 5 years I think, since we.
Yeah, but your progression within the company has been incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And I think I speak for everybody when it's so impressive. Your work ethic, I think, is definitely. Played a huge part in that, and definitely seeing you create Okichi with Kennington North Glacier was just, I mean, incredible. To have achieved that much within 5 years is brilliant. What's it like? Because I think everybody here has had something created on them versus learning stuff that exists already. What's that experience like? I mean, Minju, you've now already had that kind of condensed experience in a really short time. Do you have a preference?
I think it is like a responsibility, but it's not like a pressure. It's more like you just want it to be good. It's like a baby, you know. I don't know. I mean, I never had a baby before.
No, but I think that's a brilliant way to think about it. You're making something that doesn't exist, and do you feel a kind of urgency, a necessity to nurture the role, when you're creating a character from the very beginnings?
Yeah, I think because you're creating the magic from the scratch.
Yeah.
So you set the language of the character, the element of the character. So it needs a lot of research, and how do you want to portray it. Because when you learn a ballet that is already created, it's in a way you learn the acting, or she wouldn't do that, or she would do that kind of thing. When you're creating complete new character, you have to be conscious about, she wouldn't do that actually.
Yeah, so you're effectively making the rules and the boundaries for that person instead of following them, the ones that have already been preset. I don't know. Auntie, what's your experience?
I would say from a creative point of view, there's like, the possibilities are endless, right? There's nothing set. You're like, this can go anywhere. So it's so exciting in that respect, because like Minji was saying, it's not set. You don't have to follow something and then obviously interpret it your own way. But anything is possible with a creation, and that's the exciting thing, because you can have an idea of what something's going to turn out like, but it could be completely different by the end in a good way. You know, it could go in a different direction, but it also becomes, you know, quite personal. You know, you sort of nurture it, like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, and it is special, I think, creating something, especially when it's new for everybody. You're all in the same boat, you know. Some people might have done a production before, others new to it. In this scenario, everybody's creating something new together.
Yes, okay. So no matter what that role is, everybody's creating something from the very the scratch, as it were. Ashley, when I think of creation, I just think of you in Beast. I think it was such a brilliant moment for you, but you were also incredibly young when you got that opportunity as well.
Yeah, I was quite young.
What was that like? Because actually you were doing that principal role alongside Martha Liebelt and then Kenneth Tyndall. So did you feel a pressure to kind of
I think of course there was the pressure. They were both two very experienced, established members of the company, and it was like a big opportunity for me. And on top of that, it wasn't coming into it as just like, okay, you're coming in as a dancer. We kind of had to make up a whole movement material for this sort of he was a creature, he's not human, but David was saying, oh, I don't want it stereotypical, so we did a lot of research, and so we kind of made this movement material that was almost ape-like in a way. But David said, oh, I don't want it too much like an ape, so it was like some sort of big cat crossed with an ape, and
brilliant,
so there was a lot to play with, and I think opening night was just the starting point of that role, and it's just continued to evolve, and then bringing it back, I think it was 5-6 years ago, you approach it a different way again, and you add more to it. And
I mean, that must be lovely as well, is that you've been able to revisit it.
Yeah, definitely. You take a different approach. Obviously, you're slightly older in it. The joints weren't as supple in the second time, but you bring a different quality to it, and you progress it in different ways.
Yeah, okay. And Lorenzo, I know you haven't created, let's say, a principal role yet, but you did create the artist in Casanova. And I really remember that. And I just thought that is the kind of epitome of taking an opportunity and absolutely maximizing it.
Yeah, I mean,
did you enjoy it?
I loved it. Yeah, I mean, I was just, I don't know. I was really thinking of like Johnny Depp. That was my like.
Okay, brilliant.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp kind of thing, and it, for some reason it just really worked, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun, to be honest. I mean, it was just.
Yeah, but I mean that's fantastic to already have made that connection, that you were thinking so visually and also taking on the physical mannerisms of something and then trialing it within a character to see if it worked. And I think that's when you get kind of moments of genius. And like we're all giggling when we remember that role, because he was so flamboyant. I mean, he was on stage for sort of 40 seconds.
Yeah,
and you think you're right back there to that point. It's brilliant. How much of what you do is driven by a desire to be the best? And I know it's a tough question, but I think, is there an element of that in what we do?
I can answer this, but I don't know if it will sound right, but I always think that I want to be the best I can possibly be. You know, and I always look at my amazing colleagues and use them as inspiration. Like, just for example, this 1984 Pas de Deux, it was so nice to see two young dancers taking it on and just doing it in their way. And I wanted to take some of that inspiration and try and put that in my body, but just challenge myself for what I can do. So it's kind of for me being the best at what I know I'm capable of.
And was that always your focus? Were you ever drawn into the kind of competitiveness of what we do? Because I know that Auntie now, I mean, you're at the very top of the company. was that an aspiration, or was it about the work that you were doing?
So for me, this is going to be quite honest, but I've always struggled with injuries.
Yeah.
And I came to the company with an injury, actually, with bad shins and a bad ankle.
Mm-hmm.
So I never actually thought I'd make it this far. I thought, you know, I had a teacher at school that said to me, you know, even if you just go and do 1 year, you know, you've done it. You know, you can say you've done it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So my still in daily challenge is just, you know, managing those situations, you know, with pain and injuries. So for me, it's never been like, oh, I want to do that role, I want to get to this. It's like, I want to be able to do this career, you know, and enjoy it. And despite, you know, setbacks like injuries and pain. So that's always where I've come from, just to sort of overcome those challenges and not think of them as problems, but find solutions for them.
Okay.
And,
I think that's amazing to hear, because actually that's probably what set you up so well for your career, because your focus has been on your journey and not getting caught up in the kind of politics or the who's doing what or anything. Because I know definitely at times when I've been injured, that's been the most moments when you become most kind of reflective of on what you really want versus what you think people think that you want. But what about you, Ashley? Where's your drive and passion come from?
So I think we always strive for excellence, and you're always trying to better yourself, and similar to Antti but different. I know I have limitations, like I'm not the most flexible dancer in the world, and that's something I've had to deal with my whole career, but you find ways around it. And also slightly shorter dancer as well. So you don't expect necessarily to always do the sort of prince roles, the big lead roles, but there's always the opportunities here. And you just, like Antti said, you make your version of it. You take things from other casts, like Antti said with you guys, you see things and you're like, oh, I like what they did with that. And that's what I love about this place. Every cast you come and see of a production is completely different, but they all take you on the same journey in the end. But it might have gone this way round or that way round, but the end point is always the same. And just to take one point from someone else, you're like, oh, I don't like how I was doing it, but I really like what they're doing. But if I do it my way, it will still get me to the end point. So I think that's something you don't always strive like, oh, I have to be the best or whatever, but you be the best you can be.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I think also what's really lovely is that you have gone into your career not anticipating perhaps those principal roles, but then luck has played a part, and you've got partnered with Pippa Moore quite early in your career, which was, I mean, I'll put words in your mouth, was helpful because she was so experienced. And
very.
then also Antti joining the company, you guys have worked together quite a lot. I think those elements you cannot anticipate, but they become very poignant moments.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you guys? Where's your drive and passion from when you think about your careers and potentially where they could go in the future?
For me, I feel like really lucky since I was in the school. I always had this doubt that, and even some of the teacher I knew when I was in Korea still tells me that, oh, like, you are like super ordinary student, and and he said,
I just can't imagine that, Minju.
And he was impressed how far I have made so far. And then it could sound like harsh, but I genuinely took it as a compliment.
Brilliant.
And I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, it really makes me happy to hear that. And then because I always had someone to look up to. I always had a doubt, like, about I don't have a feet, for example. I don't know if I have those sides in me. But when I was in school and I was really lucky to have met the teachers that really take those things out of me, like, come on, like, stop being shy, you know. And then you started to find this like quality in yourself that, oh, I didn't know I could do this, for example. And then now I stop kind of thinking like less about it.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
It's like I feel alive, and you know, like
yeah.
It's fascinating to find that in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what kept me going. That I don't know, like I didn't imagine this like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
don't know if I keep just going. I don't know what it could bring, you know.
No, and I think that's what's wonderful about this conversation is that you're hearing people that have maybe come up against stuff that other people would have chosen to make them feel like maybe they shouldn't bother trying, but actually you've taken those things and shown kind of tenacity and also a lot of resilience and made them work for you, and that you've managed to remain just focused on your journey and not kind of get caught up in it all. But for Lorenzo, where would you like to be in the future? Because your career's on the upward path, and you're developing into such a just a brilliant partner, which obviously is really useful.
Yeah, I mean, as she said, like it's quite exciting to see like where you thought you were gonna be when you were in school, for example. I didn't really think I was gonna be like here where I am now, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I can't really imagine where I'm gonna be in 10 years, but I hope it keeps going this way.
Yeah.
You know? I think with what she said, like I don't think I was very good, like at a younger age, you know, in school and stuff, to like kind of like open myself to my own weakness. I always found it a bit
kind
hard.
of to be honest about those. Yeah.
Like honest to myself, and I think that's the worst thing you can do to yourself, because it's kind of just like you notice something that is not right and you just kind of like put it aside just because you don't want to like deal with it, but not out of like laziness and stuff. It's just more out of like you don't want to like bring yourself to that place.
Yeah,
it can be quite like
it's hard to confront those sides of yourselves, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think for me the biggest change in my whole like career has been when I've actually like confronted those things and like came to it, you know. And that's when you actually like can make like a big jump, like can make a big change and stuff. And once you start doing those things, once you start like confronting your like weakness, you get lost, like I feel, within yourself. So that's when you stop worrying about like other people and like, oh, he's like that good, I'm not quite that good, you know?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you do that when you're like not open to yourself. Once you're like open yourself to yourself, then you just get like in your zone.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and then you just become focused on,
and you just keep improving, improving. And then sometimes you can have a peek outside to see what everybody's like. And you see that it's actually like, oh wow, I actually like,
I'm doing okay.
Like, and then you just go back to your inside yourself, you know, and just keep working. And then in another 10 years, I might have another look. Look.